All right, it is time for my weekly wrap up and film goals. Check-in, otherwise known as my week in film. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. One of my goals for this year in terms of film watching is simply to watch more movies, and to support that goal, I have given myself 3 categories of film that I am going to be watching in this first quarter, and I'm aiming to watch 10 films out of these 3 categories by the end of the first quarter, which is 13 weeks, so 10 films in 13 weeks of each of the categories. So that's what I'm sort of doing this year, and I've done a wrap up for each of the weeks so far, and it's been really fun to do those. It's also been really fun to watch the movies. And and the 3 categories that I'm working with this quarter are monster movies, dance movies, and newly added world cinema to Canopy, which is a streaming service that's connected to libraries. It's like Hoopla, but for film. So let's get right to it this week, and we'll see how things went. So first up, my monster movie. I was able to watch stuff on Tubi this week. The challenge that I was having with it seemed to be rectified, which is wonderful. And so I finally got to the Yaphet Kotto shark movie, which is Shark's Treasure. So this was released in 1975. It is actually more of like an adventure thriller film than a monster movie, and it features people that are going basically treasure hunting. Someone finds some gold in the bottom of the ocean and then gets a crew together, and then they try and find more of the gold. Challenge is, who else is in that territory? That would be the sharks. So I thought this would be like fun, action, monsters, sharks, stuff. Not so much. This was, I would actually have to say, probably the first big miss of the year. Godzilla King of the Monsters was a miss of a different reason, but this was quite a miss. If you can't read the thing there, but it says, warning, this shark footage, the shark footage in this motion picture is 100% real, no trick photography, no mechanical models, no miniatures were used. This film was made at great risk of life and limb. For the first time on the screen, you will see the total shock of the most sensational shark fight ever filmed. So I was not expecting that, but partway through the film, I was kind of like, oh, like when I started to realize what was going on in terms of they wanted the treasure and the sharks were there, that they needed to, deal with the sharks, I was like, oh, did not expect where it went. I don't know if that's true or not. This is from the 70s. It could have just been sensationalism. But to be honest, there was some footage, and there was some footage where it's just sharks, like it's not people. And there was some great underwater photography and a lot of great fish stuff and great sunset scenes on the water. Oh my gosh, the colors, like really beautiful cinematography. But like didn't mean to go there, but it does say there is a shark fight. And when there was a shark fight, I'm like, yeah, that looks real. And I don't think you should be able to film that. There certainly wasn't anything that came up at the end that said no animals were harmed during this film. I am pretty sure they were more than harmed. And so that felt like really like uncomfortable. And I don't think you would, like, if you were to film this today, you couldn't do that. Like, I don't think you could do that. And it makes me thankful that we have effects, and models, and you know what I mean? Like this kind of like thrill kind of thing. No, it's not okay to do that. It's not okay to do that for our entertainment as viewers. So it took me a while to sort of pick up on that's where it was going. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to see this. And by the time I sort of like figured it out, most of the shark stuff was done, sort of. Yeah, and then there's a whole side plot of escaped convicts and there was lots of stereotyping with certain things, and then because it's from the 70s, it's pretty gritty with that kind of thing, And I was like, whoa, that's not what I wanted. That is not what I wanted. The exact opposite of what I wanted. And so that was pretty upsetting and disappointing. So that was a huge miss in terms of a monster movie, because I think it makes it actually clear that the humans were the monsters, you know. And I don't think it's appropriate for that to be done for, you know, our viewing, like, pleasure, you know what I mean? I don't think it's okay. And I think it's pretty surprising. Oh, here's a poster that has the cast on it. So, yeah, and I don't think it wouldn't happen today. It wouldn't happen today. So, and this type of stuff that I've seen that sort of this ilk is way earlier cinema, you know, like early cinema with animals and stuff like that. And you're just like, whoa, I don't think those horses made it. And I was like, no, not okay. Not okay to go there. So I'm going to leave that one there. And I resisted like looking films up in the middle of watching stuff because, one, spoilers, and I was well into it, so I was like, I might as well finish it. So, but big disappointment. So next we go on to Yaphet Kotto was great though, because Yaphet Kotto is great, and I just love him so much. He's from Alien and Homicide: Life on the Street, and I think Live and Let Die, yeah, I think that was the Bond film that he was in. So I really, really do. So that was the pull to me, and then the sharks, and I didn't look very much further. And that's the risk I take for not researching. And I was going to say I'm happy to take it, but I mean, you know, I think the rewards of not knowing in terms of the viewing experience, I think usually outweigh the disappointments, but that was quite a disappointment. So anyway, on to the next. So I have my dance movie of the week, which was Into the Beat, or Den Tanz. Please forgive my German, because I don't really have any knowledge of German. So this is actually a German dance film from 2020. I think it's a Netflix original, or it's on Netflix. I watched it on Netflix. It's mostly in German, but it also is sometimes there's some French in it with the dance teachers, and some English and some Russian. But generally it's in German. This is the classic setup of a dance film. We have someone who is classically trained or formally trained in dance. In this case, it's ballet, and then, you know, sort of gets has their eyes opened by seeing hip hop dancing, and then they're like interested in doing that, although it's a challenge because they've gone through formal training and they don't understand like the world and how things are, and that it's a completely different not only she understood that it was a different style of dance, but she didn't understand it was a different culture of dance in terms of you don't just copy people, you actually have to like make things up, you know, and stuff like that. So and then there is a romantic interest, and so it's just like the classic setup, absolutely classic. Will she continue formal training and like meet the expectations of her family, or will she go out on her own and follow her heart and follow the dance and those kinds of, it's totally classic. So I will say I don't think this poster is the best, but it was like the only one I could find, because I don't know, it just doesn't really give the vibe of it, but I really like the dance, I really like the music. I mean, it's a tried, tested, and true story, but I ended up really enjoying it, I will say sometimes the character transitions in terms of why she felt like she wanted to do this versus why she wanted to do that, or like the changing her mind and stuff like that. I felt like that wasn't always fleshed out, but that could actually be the writing or the editing, as opposed to the acting, right? So I felt that sometimes the arc of the character story was a little wobbly, but I mean, I've watched a million dance movies, so I know where this was going, I know where it started, and I enjoyed the ride 100%. It was a lot of fun, and it was exactly what I wanted, and I was gonna say, it's been a while since I watched a German film, and I actually do not know if I've watched any like contemporary German film. I've definitely seen like early cinema German film, but so it was So that was, it made me think, oh, well, maybe I should watch more German films. So that was pretty cool. And it also was really cool. The dance was cool, but they did show just a little bit of some like really high level ballet. And I was like, wow, I haven't seen that in a while. And like, it's huge skill level, ballet, like without question. But I do tend to, like, for me, I tend to like contemporary dance or hip hop. Like I did like the street dancing without question. In these kinds of scenarios, I'm always like, follow your heart, follow the music. And they did talk a little bit more about the music. That's often been my criticism with dance films. They don't always talk about the relationship to the music, to the dance. But this one, they did talk about sort of like finding your own rhythm. And although there was one dance class there was no instruction whatsoever. And I'm like, how can you have a dance class without instruction? Actually, both of the dance classes they showed, the formal and the street dance class, there's no actual instruction. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. I'm really happy that I watched it, and it was a blast. I also, as a bonus, I ended up watching, rewatching for me, another dance film, which was Girls Just Want to Have Fun. This is from 1985 and stars Sarah Jessica Parker, Helen Hunt, and Shannon Doherty, who's actually barely in it. This poster, I feel like, doesn't give a huge, great vibe to it. This gives very much like it would have been in, 17 or Mademoiselle, like Teen Beat, that kind of vibe. And this is another great one. Talk about, like, you don't see this kind of fashion when we see nostalgia or historical stuff. Or like 80s set stuff. You don't see those options. And actually Helen Hunt's character, that's actually another pretty good one. Helen Hunt's character was the one that I remembered the most. So this I actually watched with my sisters, and it was a lot of fun. I hadn't seen it for a really long time. It's not one of my favorites in terms of dance movies, in particular because Sarah Jessica Parker's character is a dancer as well as a gymnast. So, and I'm not a huge fan of like adding the gymnastics in and still calling it dance, because, or that's not really it. Like, it's a whole other skill. So I kind of feel like it's a bit like, I don't know, I guess it's a bit like cheating. Anyway, but when I watched it, I actually realized that it was not as prominent as I remembered when I was younger and I watched it. So it was a lot of fun, again, and it follows, she's a new kid in town at a private school and befriends Helen Hunt, who's a bit of a punk, or innovative thinker, great fashion forward, in my opinion. That was some of the things that really made an impression on me. She is, I guess she's classically trained. She's ballet and gym. And then they enter a dance contest, and it's for Dance TV. That's what it was, Dance TV. The winning group ends up on Dance TV, and then there's an antagonist, of course. That's the debutante kind of situation. It was pretty good. It was, it was better than I remembered. Oh, here's a nice montage kind of situation. It gets a bit of the vibe of the, so that was pretty fun. And then my final film of the week was my newly added World Cinema to Canopy, and I watched The Ancestral. This is a Vietnamese horror film, and this follows a family who moves to an ancestor's home, or an ancestral home. They say it's an ancestral home, but I had a hard time figuring out like whose home it was. Like, there was a bit of a precursor thing that sort of gave a sense of who it was, but they left a lot sort of unsaid because it's a horror movie, so you have to sort of like fill in the blanks, and are you filling in the blanks or are you assuming things? And it's sort of, so sometimes it had that kind of vibe to it. But this follows a family, father and two daughters, and there is one of the challenges with the family is a inherited sleep paralysis, and they're trying to help someone through that. And then there's also some melancholy that is not quite clear what it is, although it's pretty clear, that sort of has the thread there. So this was an interesting watch, and I admit I picked a scary movie a little bit because the shark movie was not a monster movie. Now this wasn't a monster movie, but I haven't watched a horror movie in a while, and it was scary. I found it scary, even though there's moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, you just know it's gonna happen, or you're just waiting for something to happen. You're waiting to see something in the back or whatever. Like it's just you're just like on edge, like being like, what's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? Who is that? Like, and I love that. I actually love that. It's one of the things that I think is great about horror is that it's got sometimes like there's lots of different micro genres within horror, but in terms of this kind of vibe, it's so atmospheric. Like you're just curious about what's really going on, and that kind of thing. The challenge I have with this one is that the sleep paralysis, and then sort of in a more grander sense, the idea of like a mental health concern being sort of the potential like reason for what's happening is something that I'm very tired of seeing in horror movies, because I think it's not very compassionate to mental health, and also it just provides a bit of an easy out in terms of leaving things there, and they could be red herrings or they could actually be explained by the mental health condition. And so that's not my favorite. It's more than not my favorite. I think it's not a good way to go. I've seen it a lot. I understand why people use it, but I think we're better than that now. Like I feel like we should be better than that, getting better than that, than using that as a writing device, because it actually is something that affects people, and to have it be a device for entertainment, I don't think is great. I think we should go in other directions for that kind of thing. But it was really the way to make you uncomfortable, and or question things. And I will say, although I felt like there was a good resolve in the end, which I think is important for horror. I think you can leave things open-ended, but you don't have to. And often films try and do both, and I think this one actually did try and do both. So even though I think I thought it was a good resolve, if I went back, I think there were things that didn't make, like I'm not entirely sure that everything that happened actually had an explanation. But I do give credit to it in the sense that there was a lot of, there's another poster, creepy poster. But I do give credit to the fact that it also, it actually also surprised me several times with some of the directions and choices it had. So, I mean, I watch a lot of horror movies, so I usually can see a lot of things coming, but I was like, oh, didn't expect that. But there also were some things that were quite jarring and disturbing, as is often the case with horror. But like, I was just like, I really would have to go back and rewatch it to be like, what was going on here? What was going on here? How do you explain this? Or how do you explain that? And I don't know if it was all explained or not, but I do know that I was engaged and interested and curious and present with the characters for the entirety of the film. It kept my attention, and even when I had a sense of where it was going, I still was with it 100% of the time, and that is a great feat. So it ended up, like, it's one of those things I can criticize ABC, but in the end, I think it was a very successful horror movie, which is really exciting. So then it was nice to watch something new and watch something that was a different genre, because I watched all action. The first 3 films I've watched so far were action films, so it was nice to get some horror in the mix. Although I don't watch horror that often, it did scare me. I was like, okay, all the lights are on. Let's put all the lights on. Let's put some loud music on. Look, it's just like, which is so funny. So anyway, so that is what I watched this week. So that's another 3 films seen. Oh, I didn't do the math, so I'll try and do the math next time. That being said, I think next week I'm not going to have 3 new films seen. I am definitely going to be watching the Arena World Cup, which is World of Warcraft esports, which is on all weekend. So it's multiple days and lots of hours. So I thought I maybe could watch some films earlier in the week to sort of make up for the fact that on the weekend I'm going to be watching esports all weekend. I'm going to be watching PvP all weekend. So it's unlikely that I will get 3 films in next week, but I will try and have a film-related video next week. Even if I don't, I might look into maybe making an anticipated films of the year list or something like that. So, or something else. So, but I do feel, and that's one of the reasons why I tried to go for 10 weeks out of 13, because I knew that trying to get 13 out of 13, things will come up, and something did. So I'll be watching the AWC and seeing what happens, what specs are the specs this season and all that good stuff, and I will get back to more movies soon. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with another video soon. Take care.